Pacific wasn't supposed to be fought like Europe. There were no endless fields where tanks could dominate, no wide-open roads for massive armored columns. Instead, there was a world where visibility ended just a few feet ahead. Towering palm trees blocked the sunlight. Thick vines twisted across the ground like living traps. Every step echoed with uncertainty. For thousands of American Marines stepping onto islands like Guadalcanal in 1942, it felt as though the jungle itself had become an enemy. The heat was relentless. Humidity soaked uniforms within minutes. Weapons rusted overnight. Mosquitoes spread malaria. Every creek, every hill, every patch of dense vegetation could hide an unseen rifleman. Then came the silence. Veterans later described the Pacific jungle as terrifying because it was often completely quiet, until suddenly it wasn't. One moment, only birds. The next, machine gun fire, mortar explosions, and hundreds of Japanese soldiers charging through the trees. Unlike the battlefields of Europe, where armies often fought at hundreds of yards, many Pacific engagements erupted at distances measured in feet. Sometimes soldiers didn't even know they were standing next to the enemy until someone pulled a trigger. That changed everything. Weapons designed for long-range engagements suddenly became difficult to use. The famous M1 Garand was powerful, accurate, and dependable. But in thick jungle vegetation, targets appeared for only a fraction of a second. A soldier might hear movement behind a bush, turn, fire, and the fight was already within 20 yards. The Pacific demanded something different, something devastating at close range. America already had that weapon. It just wasn't considered important. Long before World War II began, the United States military had experimented with combat shotguns. During World War I, American troops carried the Winchester Model 1897 trench gun. Its pump-action design, combined with a short barrel and devastating buckshot, made it one of the deadliest close-quarters weapons ever fielded. German forces hated it so much that they formally protested its use in 1918, claiming it violated the laws of war. The United States ignored those complaints. After World War I ended, however, military planners shifted their attention toward rifles, machine guns, artillery, and mechanized warfare. Many believed another trench war would never happen. Few expected soldiers to fight inside dense tropical jungles. As a result, combat shotguns remained in military inventories, but in relatively small numbers. Then Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Everything changed. By 1942, America was suddenly fighting across thousands of miles of Pacific islands. Every landing became a brutal contest for beaches, ridges, caves, and dense forests. The Japanese Imperial Army had spent years preparing for exactly this environment. Their infantry emphasized speed, aggression, night attacks, close combat. Instead of relying entirely on overwhelming firepower, Japanese units often sought to close the distance as quickly as possible. Many officers believed that shock, discipline, and aggressive assaults could overwhelm technologically superior opponents. Again and again, American Marines found themselves defending small jungle positions against determined attacks that erupted almost without warning. In these moments, every second mattered. Every shot counted, and accuracy wasn't always enough. What soldiers needed was immediate stopping power, a weapon capable of ending a close-range attack before it reached the trench, before it reached the foxhole, before it reached the machine gun position. That's where the humble 12-gauge shotgun began, writing one of the most remarkable stories of the Pacific War. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't issued to every soldier, it lacked the range of a rifle. But inside the jungle, range meant very little. Power meant everything. When a pump-action shotgun fired a load of double-aught buckshot, multiple large pellets spread toward the target almost instantly, making it especially effective in extremely close engagements. Against charging infantry at short distances, its psychological and physical impact could be enormous. American Marines quickly noticed something else: the unmistakable sound. The metallic clack-clack of a pump-action shotgun, echoing through the jungle, became unforgettable. Veterans from both sides later remembered how close combat in the Pacific often turned into chaotic, split-second encounters where survival depended on whichever side reacted first. For many American units operating in those conditions, the shotgun became more than just another weapon. It became reassurance, a final line of defense, a weapon built for the terrifying reality of jungle warfare. But even its biggest supporters had no idea just how important it would soon become. Because somewhere beyond the trees, hidden in darkness, Japanese infantry were already preparing another assault, and they had no idea what was waiting for them. A weapon America almost left behind. The first Marines who landed on Guadalcanal in August 1942 carried some of the finest infantry weapons the United States had ever produced. The semi-automatic M1 Garand, the reliable M1903 Springfield, the Browning automatic rifle, the legendary .30 caliber machine gun. On paper, America possessed overwhelming firepower. But war has a way of exposing flaws that military planners never anticipated. The Pacific wasn't a battlefield of maps and straight lines, it was a maze. Dense jungle reduced visibility to less than 30 feet in many areas. Thick undergrowth swallowed trails, hills, ravines, and tangled vegetation broke formations apart. A platoon could disappear into the jungle only yards away from another platoon. Under those conditions, even the best rifle in the world have limitations. A Marine might hear movement before seeing anything. A shadow crossed between two trees. A branch snapped. Then, suddenly, the enemy was already within shotgun distance. The Imperial Japanese Army trained its infantry to exploit exactly this kind of terrain. Instead of depending solely on long-range firefights, Japanese soldiers frequently used concealment, infiltration, and carefully coordinated night attacks to close the distance. In many battles, they attempted to overwhelm isolated American positions before superior firepower could be fully brought to bear. American commanders quickly realized they needed weapons specifically suited for these terrifying encounters. Fortunately, the answer had been sitting in military storage for years. The combat shotgun. Unlike sporting shotguns used for hunting, military shotguns were rugged fighting tools. Several models entered American service during World War II, including the Winchester Model 1897, the Winchester Model 1912, the Stevens Model 520, 30, and later the Ithaca Model 37 in more limited roles. Many were equipped with heat shields and bayonet. To many officers, these old pump-action guns seemed outdated. Some even questioned whether they belonged on a modern battlefield. Others disagreed. Veterans of earlier conflicts remembered what happened when enemies came too close. They remembered trenches. They remembered house-to-house fighting. They remembered the terrifying effectiveness of 12-gauge buckshot at short range. Soon, crates that had gathered dust were opened once again. Armorers inspected each weapon. Stocks were repaired, actions were cleaned. Barrels were tested. Thousands of shells were packed alongside them. No one knew that these old shotguns were about to earn a new reputation in one of history's harshest theaters of war. The ammunition itself made the shotgun unique. Most combat loads contained 9 large double-aught buckshot pellets. Each pellet was roughly the size of a small handgun bullet. When fired together at close range, they created a devastating pattern capable of delivering immense stopping power within the distances typical of jungle fighting. Contrary to popular myths, the spread was not enormous. At close range, the pellets remained relatively tight, meaning the shotgun still required careful aiming. Its effectiveness came from the combined impact of multiple large projectiles, not from indiscriminate spread. That distinction mattered. Experienced Marines trained to fire deliberately, conserve ammunition, and place shots where they counted. The shotgun was not a substitute for discipline. It rewarded it. As more units entered the Solomon Islands campaign, word began spreading. A patrol requested 1 shotgun. A patrol requested 1 shotgun. Another platoon asked for 2. Machine gun crews wanted 1 near their defensive positions. Combat engineers carrying explosives preferred them. While clearing bunkers, scouts leading jungle patrols often found them especially reassuring. The weapon was becoming more than specialized equipment, it was becoming trusted. Japanese intelligence recognized that American firepower was increasing, but there is little historical evidence that they viewed the shotgun as a strategic surprise. Rather, many Japanese soldiers encountered it unexpectedly during close-range engagements where its effectiveness became immediately apparent. In those split-second encounters, the weapon's psychological effect could be just as significant as its physical power. Japanese intelligence recognized that American firepower was increasing, but there is little historical evidence that they viewed the shotgun as a strategic surprise. Rather, Many Japanese soldiers encountered it unexpectedly during close-range engagements, where its effectiveness became immediately apparent. In those split-second encounters, the weapon's psychological effect could be just as significant as its physical power. The sharp blast of a 12-gauge echoed differently from a rifle. The metallic sound of the pump cycling another shell was unmistakable. Veterans later recalled that in the chaos of jungle combat, those sounds often meant an American defensive position was still holding. Meanwhile, American Marines were learning another important lesson. The shotgun wasn't replacing the rifle. It was complementing it. Rifle engaged targets at longer distances. Machine guns dominated open approaches. Mortars struck enemy assembly areas. But when visibility collapsed, when darkness covered the jungle, when footsteps suddenly appeared only yards away, the shotgun became the weapon everyone wanted beside them. The Pacific War was forcing both armies to adapt. The Japanese refined infiltration tactics. The Americans refined close defense techniques. Every patrol became a classroom. Every firefight revealed another lesson. Every firefight revealed another lesson. And every battle proved that technology alone did not determine victory. Terrain did. Training did. Discipline victory. Training did. Discipline did. By late 1942, the shotgun had earned respect among the men who carried it. Yet its greatest test was still ahead, because on countless humid nights across Guadalcanal, Japanese assault units gathered silently beyond the American perimeter. Officers whispered final orders, bayonets were fixed, rifles were checked. Then the jungle fell silent. For a few brief moments, no one moved, no one spoke. And then, a bugle shattered the darkness. Voices erupted into thunderous battle cries. Hundreds of soldiers surged forward through the trees. The Marines tightened their grip on every weapon they had. But for the men holding 12-gauge pump shotguns, the real test of their forgotten weapon had finally arrived. The night the Banzai charge met the 12-Gaugian nightfall in the Pacific brought more than darkness. It brought uncertainty. As the tropical sun disappeared beneath the horizon, the jungle transformed into a world of shadows. The air became heavy with humidity. Insects filled the silence with an endless chorus. Every rustling leaf sounded like footsteps. Every snapped twig raised the same terrifying question. Was someone out there? For American Marines on Guadalcanal, sleep came in short, uneasy moments. Defensive lines were reinforced before sunset. Machine guns were repositioned. Rifle ammunition was stacked within arm's reach. Grenades were placed beside foxholes. Everyone expected the enemy to come after dark. And, more often than not, they did. Unlike many European battles, where large attacks frequently relied on armored support and artillery preparation, Japanese forces in the Pacific often used darkness, concealment, and aggressive infantry tactics to approach American positions. Night operations reduced the effectiveness of American air power and made long-range marksmanship far more difficult. The jungle became an equalizer. Visibility shrank to just a few yards. Identification became nearly impossible. Friend and foe were often separated by only a handful of feet. American sentries listened more than they watched. Sometimes they heard whispers. Sometimes they heard whispers. Sometimes they heard nothing at all. Then, a flare shot into the sky. The darkness vanished for an instant. Tree trunks cast long shadows across the battlefield. Helmet silhouettes appeared between the palms. And suddenly, the silence exploded. Machine guns roared. Mortars thundered. Rifle fire echoed through the jungle. Japanese infantry rushed forward, attempting to break through weak points before American defenders could organize a coordinated response. Some attackers crawled through tall grass. Others used dry creek beds. Small groups tried to slip around the flanks. Their objective was simple: get close. Close enough that superior American firepower became difficult to use effectively. Inside one defensive sector, a Marine gripped a Winchester Model 1897. The shotgun felt different from the Garand. Shorter, heavier toward the front. Simple, reliable. He had practiced cycling the action until it became instinctive. Safety off, finger ready. Eyes fixed on the darkness. Movement. Just ahead. Branches swayed. Another shadow. Then another. There was no time for careful calculation. He fired. The 12-gauge blast shattered the night. The recoil slammed into his shoulder. Smoke rolled from the muzzle. Without hesitation, His left hand drove the forend backward. Clack. An empty shell spun into the air. Forward again. Clack. Another round entered the chamber. The sound cut through the chaos. Veterans later described that metallic pump action as one of the most recognizable sounds of close-quarters combat in the Pacific. It meant the weapon was ready again. Almost instantly, another figure emerged. Another shot, another shell ejected, another round chambered. Again and again. At these distances, often measured in just a few yards, the shotgun's multiple buckshot pellets delivered tremendous stopping power. It was especially effective when attackers appeared suddenly from dense vegetation, leaving little time for multiple aimed rifle shots. Nearby riflemen continued firing their M1 Garands. BR gunners swept likely avenues of approach. Machine gun crews held interlocking fields of fire. Every weapon played its role. The shotgun wasn't winning the battle alone. It was strengthening the battle alone. It was strengthening the defense at the moments when the fighting became hand-to-hand close. Japanese soldiers displayed extraordinary determination throughout the Pacific campaign. Many continued advancing despite overwhelming danger. Others sought gaps between foxholes. Some attempted to silence machine gun positions with grenades. The fighting became desperate. Flares drifted overhead. Palm trees splintered from bullets. The smell of burned gunpowder mixed with damp earth. Orders were shouted, but often lost beneath the deafening noise. In the confusion, individual Marines made split-second decisions that determined whether sections of the line held or collapsed. For those carrying shotguns, hesitation was rarely an option. A target appeared. Fire. Cycle. Fire again. Every movement became automatic. Training replaced fear. Adrenaline replaced exhaustion. Hours seemed like minutes. Minutes felt like seconds. As dawn slowly approached, the sounds of battle began to fade. The jungle returned to an uneasy silence. Smoke drifted through shattered trees. Spent cartridge cases covered the ground. Medics moved from foxhole to foxhole, treating the wounded. Officers walked the defensive line, counting survivors and checking ammunition. The perimeter had held, not because of one weapon, not because of one man, but because every Marine had done exactly what the situation demanded. In after-action reports and veterans' recollections, close-range weapons, including combat shotguns, earned respect for their usefulness during defensive actions in dense terrain. While Hollywood has sometimes exaggerated their role, the historical record consistently shows that shotguns proved valuable in specific close combat situations. Word spread quickly through the ranks. The shotgun works, patrol leaders began requesting more. Engineers wanted them for bunker assaults. Military police used them for guarding prisoners and installations. Point men on jungle patrols increasingly favored them when available. The once overlooked weapon had found its battlefield, but Guadalcanal was only the beginning. Far ahead lay new islands, new jungles, new caves, and a battlefield unlike anything the Marines had yet experienced. A place where the shotgun would face an entirely different kind of enemy because the Japanese army was changing its tactics. Instead of charging, they would wait, hidden beneath coral rock, inside tunnels, deep within mountains. The next battle would prove that surviving the Pacific required more than courage. It required adapting to an enemy who was learning just as quickly. Peleliu fighting and peaceable enemy. September 15th, 1944. The island of Peleliu looked almost peaceful from the sea. White beaches shimmered beneath the tropical sun. Palm trees swayed gently in the warm Pacific breeze. From the decks of American landing ships, it appeared to be another island that would fall in a matter of days. Military planners estimated the battle might last 3 or 4 days. Instead, it would become one of the bloodiest battles fought by the United States Marine Corps during World War II. But the Japanese defenders had changed. The massive banzai charges that characterized earlier battles had proven devastatingly costly. Japanese commanders had learned painful lessons from Guadalcanal, Tarawa, and Saipan. This time, they would fight differently. Instead of meeting the Americans on the beaches, they disappeared. Deep inside Peleliu's jagged coral ridges, Jagged Peace engineers spent months creating one of the most sophisticated defensive systems of the Pacific War. Hundreds of caves, hidden bunkers, Underground tunnels, machine gun nests carved directly into solid rock, artillery hidden behind steel doors. The defenders intended to make every yard of ground cost American lives. When the Marines landed, they expected resistance near the shoreline. Instead, many beaches seemed strangely quiet. The silence didn't last. Without warning, heavy machine gun fire erupted from concealed positions. Mortars crashed into the landing zones. Artillery shells exploded among amphibious vehicles. The enemy was everywhere, yet almost nowhere to be seen. Unlike earlier campaigns, the Japanese rarely exposed themselves. They waited patiently inside fortified caves until American troops approached. Then they struck with devastating precision. Every cave became a fortress. Every ridge became a battlefield. The Marines quickly discovered that rifles alone could not solve every problem. Enemy soldiers often remained hidden behind thick rock walls. Machine guns covered narrow approaches. Flamethrowers became one of the most effective weapons against these fortifications. Engineers followed with demolition charges. But once a cave entrance had been breached, someone still had to go inside. That was where close-quarters weapons became invaluable. Combat shotguns, submachine guns, pistols, and grenades all played important roles during cave-clearing operations. Inside a cave, visibility was measured in inches. Smoke filled the air, dust drifted from shattered stone. Flashlights provided only narrow beams of light. Every corner concealed another danger. Every tunnel bent into darkness. Marines advanced carefully. One man covered forward, another watched behind. Every step could trigger an ambush. Suddenly, movement. A figure appeared from the darkness. There was no time to shoulder a rifle for a precise long-range shot. The engagement happened almost instantly. At such close distances, the 12-gauge shotgun proved exceptionally effective. Its compact handling and powerful buckshot made it well-suited for confined spaces where engagements occurred at only a few feet. Yet the shotgun was never used alone. Combat engineers carried explosives. Flamethrower teams neutralized deeply fortified positions. Riflemen secured cave entrances. Machine guns prevented escape routes. Victory came through teamwork, not through any single weapon. Outside, the battle grew even more brutal. Temperatures climbed above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Fresh water became scarce. Coral dust filled lungs with every breath. The sharp limestone terrain shredded boots and uniforms. Wounded Marines often had to be carried across razor-sharp rock under enemy fire. Days turned into weeks. Every hill captured revealed another defensive line behind it. Japanese defenders rarely wasted ammunition. Instead, they waited. Sometimes for hours. Sometimes for days. Then, when American patrols passed nearby, a hidden rifle cracked. A grenade rolled downhill. A machine gun opened fire from an opening no one had noticed. The Marines adapted. Patrols became smaller. Movement became slower. Reconnaissance became even more important. Point men often carried weapons designed for immediate stopping power because every encounter happened without warning. Veterans later described Peleliu as one of the most exhausting battles of the Pacific. There were few dramatic charges, few sweeping advances. Instead, every cave, every trench, every bunker had to be captured one at a time. The psychological strain became enormous. Imagine walking toward a dark cave knowing someone inside was waiting. Imagine hearing only your own breathing, then hearing the unmistakable metallic sound of your teammate chambering another 12-gauge shell. Clack! It wasn't just a mechanical sound, it was reassurance. It meant someone beside you was ready for whatever emerged from the darkness. By the battle's end, American casualties were staggering. Japanese losses were even greater. But perhaps the greatest lesson was tactical. The Pacific War had evolved. The Japanese army no longer relied primarily on massed assaults. Instead, they transformed islands into interconnected fortresses designed to delay, exhaust, and bleed invading forces. American units responded by improving combined arms tactics. Flamethrowers, explosives, rifles, machine guns, mortars, shotguns. Each weapon filled a specific role. Each complemented the others. The shotgun remained exactly what it had become on Guadalcanal, not the king of the battlefield, but one of its most trusted specialists. And while Peleliu demonstrated how deadly cave warfare could become, an even larger battle was waiting beyond the horizon. an island where nearly 500,000 men would fight, an island where civilians would be caught between two armies, an island where American forces would face the largest and fiercest defensive network of the Pacific War. Its name, Okinawa. And there, the 12-gauge shotgun would once again prove why some of history's most terrifying battles were fought not at long range, but only a few feet apart. Okinawa, the final storm, April 1st, 1945. To the Americans waiting offshore, Okinawa looked almost welcoming. The beaches stretched for miles beneath a bright blue sky. Naval bombardment had pounded the island for days. Battleships had fired thousands of shells. Aircraft had dropped tons of bombs. Many commanders believed the Japanese defenses had been shattered. Then the first waves of Marines and Army soldiers came ashore. Almost nothing happened. There was no wall of machine gun fire, no massive counterattack, no desperate charge down the beaches. Instead, silence. Thousands of American troops advanced inland with surprising speed. Entire sections of the coastline were secured in hours. Some soldiers even wondered if the Japanese had abandoned the island. They hadn't. They were waiting. General Mitsuru Ushijima had abandoned the idea of defending every inch of shoreline. Instead, he concentrated his forces deep within southern Okinawa, where hills, ridges, caves, and underground bunkers formed an immense defensive network. It was a strategy designed not to stop the invasion, but to make America pay for every yard of ground. Soon, the illusion ended. As American forces approached the Shuri defensive line, machine guns erupted from hidden cave entrances. Mortars crashed onto advancing infantry. Artillery shells burst from positions buried deep beneath solid rock. Every hill became a fortress. Every ridge concealed another trap. Unlike the dramatic beach assaults that dominated wartime headlines, the battle for Okinawa became a grinding campaign of attrition. Progress was measured in yards, not miles. Rain soon transformed the battlefield into a sea of mud. Vehicles became trapped. Supplies arrived slowly. Wounded soldiers struggled to reach medical stations through flooded trenches. The battlefield itself became another enemy. Then came the caves, hundreds of them. Some stretched hundreds of feet into the hillsides, others connected through narrow tunnels hidden beneath the earth. Inside, Japanese defenders waited patiently. They conserved ammunition, avoided unnecessary movement, and attacked only when American troops approached within deadly range. Every cave had to be searched, every tunnel had to be secured. There were no shortcuts. American assault teams developed carefully coordinated methods. Engineers prepared demolition charges. Flamethrower operators moved into position. Riflemen secured the perimeter. Machine guns watched nearby slopes, and among these teams, combat shotguns continued to serve a vital role. Once explosives breached a bunker entrance, someone had to move inside. That responsibility demanded extraordinary courage. Visibility disappeared almost instantly. Smoke mixed with dust. The smell of burned powder lingered in the confined air. Footsteps echoed against stone walls. Every corner concealed uncertainty. In such close quarters, the 12-gauge shotgun once again proved its value. Its effectiveness came not from range, but from immediate stopping power during sudden encounters measured in only a few feet. Veterans consistently emphasized that cave fighting required teamwork above everything else. No weapon guaranteed survival. Success depended on communication, discipline, and trust. One Marine covered the entrance, another advanced, another watched the rear. Each man depended completely on the others. Outside the caves, Okinawa revealed another terrifying dimension of modern war. For the first time on such a massive scale, American forces faced relentless kamikaze attacks against the fleet offshore. Japanese pilots deliberately crashed explosive-filled aircraft into U.S. Navy ships, sinking dozens and damaging many more. Even soldiers fighting miles inland could see black smoke rising from burning vessels beyond the coastline. The battle was being fought on land, in the air, and at sea, all at once. Meanwhile, American infantry continued inching forward. Rain-soaked uniforms day after day, mud-covered weapons. Exhaustion became constant. Medical personnel worked around the clock. Despite overwhelming American firepower, every advance required patience. Japanese defenders refused to surrender in large numbers. Many fought until their positions became untenable. Others withdrew through tunnel systems to prepare another defense farther south. This pattern repeated again and again. Capture one ridge, discover another behind it, clear one bunker, find 3 more hidden nearby. The Pacific War had become a contest of endurance. The shotgun never replaced artillery, it never replaced rifles or machine guns. But whenever fighting collapsed into narrow trenches, shattered bunkers, or confined caves, it remained one of the trusted tools carried by American assault teams. By June 1945, after nearly 3 months of relentless combat, Okinawa was finally declared secure. The cost was staggering. More than 12,000 American service members were killed, with tens of thousands wounded. Japanese military casualties were even higher, and the battle also brought catastrophic suffering to Okinawan civilians caught in the fighting. For many veterans, Okinawa represented the most brutal campaign they had ever experienced. It also raised an unsettling question. If one island had required such sacrifice, what would happen if the Allies invaded the Japanese home islands themselves? Military planners studied casualty estimates that climbed into the hundreds of thousands, or even more. Every lesson learned on Guadalcanal, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa suggested that any invasion of Japan would involve intense close-quarters combat. Weapons designed for that reality, including combat shotguns, would almost certainly play an important role. But history took a different path. Before that invasion could begin, a new weapon changed the course of the war forever. The Pacific Campaign ended, yet the reputation of the American combat shotgun did not. Among the Marines and soldiers who had carried it through jungles, caves, and trenches, the 12-gauge had earned lasting respect, not because it won battles by itself, but because it repeatedly proved its worth when the fighting became unimaginably close. Its legacy would continue long after World War II, from Korea to Vietnam and into the modern era, because sometimes history's most legendary weapons are not remembered for their range, but for the moments when there was almost no distance left at all. Why the 12-gauge became a legend when the guns finally fell silent. In 1945, the world began counting victories. Cities liberated, battles won, empires defeated, but for the men who had fought across the Pacific, memories weren't measured by maps or headlines. They remembered the sounds. The crashing surf before an amphibious landing, the drone of aircraft overhead, the constant buzz of insects in the jungle, the crack of a rifle echoing through the trees. And for many, one sound remained unmistakable: the sharp metallic clack-clack of a pump-action shotgun chambering another shell. It was a sound that meant someone on your side was still fighting. It meant the defensive line still held. It meant hope. The American combat shotgun never became the standard weapon of the U.S. military. It wasn't issued to every Marine. It wasn't designed to replace the M1 Garand, nor was it intended to dominate open battlefields. Instead, it excelled in a very specific role: close-quarters combat, where visibility disappeared, where seconds determined survival, where enemies could emerge only a few feet away. In those moments, the shotgun offered exactly what soldiers needed: simple operation, exceptional reliability, immediate stopping power at short range. That combination earned lasting respect among the troops who carried it. Yet, over the decades, stories surrounding the shotgun grew larger than life. Movies portrayed it as unstoppable. Television exaggerated its range. Some legends claimed it could clear entire battlefields with a single shot. Reality was different. The 12-gauge was devastating, but only within its intended range. Combat buckshot remained most effective at close distances. Beyond that, rifles provided far greater accuracy and reach. The shotgun also carried fewer shells than a rifle. Reloading under fire required training. Ammunition weighed more. Every weapon involved trade-offs. American military doctrine never viewed the shotgun as a miracle weapon. It viewed it as a specialized tool, and that's exactly why it succeeded. Military historians continue to study why American forces adapted so effectively in the Pacific. One answer appears again and again: flexibility. Rather than relying on one weapon for every situation, American units combined different systems. Machine guns controlled open terrain. Mortars reached hidden positions. Artillery destroyed strong points. Flamethrowers neutralized caves. Engineers breached bunkers. Shotguns protected assault teams during the closest encounters. Together, they formed a fighting system far stronger than any individual weapon. The Pacific War also demonstrated something larger than tactics. It showed that warfare constantly evolves. Early in the conflict, Japanese commanders relied heavily on aggressive offensive assaults. Later, they shifted toward elaborate defensive fortifications. American forces adapted in response. New equipment appeared. New training developed. New tactics emerged. Victory belonged not only to those with better weapons, but to those who learned faster. When World War II ended, the shotgun remained in American arsenals. Its story was far from over. Only 5 years later, war erupted again. This time in Korea. Frozen mountains replaced tropical jungles. Temperatures plunged below zero. Yet American troops once again discovered situations where close-range firepower proved invaluable. Combat shotguns quietly returned to service. Then came Vietnam. Dense jungle covered much of the battlefield. Visibility often resembled Guadalcanal more than Europe. Patrols moved cautiously through thick vegetation. Tunnel systems challenged infantry once again. Pump-action shotguns found renewed purpose. Many Marines, soldiers, and military police continued to value them during patrols, base security, and tunnel-clearing operations. The weapon that had proven itself in World War II adapted once more. Even today, modern military and law enforcement organizations around the world continue using combat shotguns for specialized missions. Technology has changed dramatically. Night vision, body armor, precision optics, drones, advanced communications. Yet in certain situations, breaching doors, protecting confined spaces, close quarters operations, the shotgun still performs tasks few other weapons handle as effectively. Its design has evolved. Its purpose remains remarkably similar. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all. History often celebrates the biggest machines. Aircraft carriers, battleships, bombers, tanks. But sometimes, the most important stories belong to ordinary equipment carried by ordinary people. Weapons that never became famous because of grand strategy, but because they helped someone survive one more day. One more patrol, one more battle. For the Marines who landed on Guadalcanal, for the soldiers climbing the ridges of Peleliu, for the assault teams entering Okinawa's caves, the shotgun was never about legend. It was about confidence. It was about preparation. It was about knowing that if the enemy suddenly appeared only a few feet away, they had a weapon built for exactly that moment. Today, museums preserve these combat shotguns behind glass. Visitors walk past them in quiet halls. Many see only wood and steel. Few can imagine the humidity of the Pacific, the darkness inside jungle trails, the fear before a night attack, or the courage required to advance toward an unseen enemy. Those stories aren't found in the weapon itself. They're found in the men who carried it, the Marines, the soldiers, the medics, the engineers, the machine gunners, the radio operators. Each played a role in one of history's most demanding campaigns. The shotgun was only one chapter in that much larger story. World War II reminds us that wars are not won by equipment alone. They are won through training, leadership, adaptation, teamwork, and extraordinary human resilience under impossible conditions. The American combat shotgun became legendary not because it was perfect, but because it proved dependable when it mattered most. And sometimes, that's what history remembers. Not the loudest weapon, not the most advanced, but the one that never failed when everything else depended on it. As the Pacific sun finally set over islands once consumed by war, the echoes of battle slowly disappeared into history. The jungles grew quiet again. The beaches returned to peace. But for those who survived, some sounds could never be forgotten. The distant crash of artillery, the cries of comrades, and somewhere in the darkness, the unmistakable sound of a 12-gauge pump-action chambering one more shell. A sound that became part of the enduring legacy of the American infantrymen in the Pacific. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more historically accurate stories from World War II, the Pacific Theater, and legendary military weapons, make sure to like this video. subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next documentary. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story from history.